Here I am again with another set of stories, so please consider subscribing to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. And while you're at it, click the notification as well. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Story 1, I let my bosses run the show today. TLDR, was told to be a normal cashier, so I let my supervisor and managers run the show. Almost everyone's breaks were forgotten about until a minimum of 30 minutes after, and they forgot to send someone home. But hey, I'm just a cashier. Oh wait, I'm not. So, for context, I'm currently a head cashier at Home Depot. I work in a higher volume store that remodeled the front end, where our registers are, a couple months ago, where our central checkout is now entirely self-checkout registers, referred to as SCO. While it's SCO, it's known as assisted SCO, and they want us to be assisting as much as possible, 6 items or more, high-price items, and anything that could hide anything inside of it are a must, as well as pushing credit card applications. Now here's where there's been a huge issue. Starting with the cashiers not pushing credit enough, so we fell behind on our goal. So last week, to make up for it, around halfway through the week, my supervisor told us she wanted everyone physically on a register. Head cashiers included. They don't even want us checking the schedule to send breaks, or the cashiers home, even though no one is allowed to get overtime. Unless there's money to handle. We aren't allowed off of a register. I bet some of you can understand how frustrating that is. It's literally a SCO. I'm having more people starting to get upset that we're constantly helping them than when we changed it to a SCO, and had a ton of people angry there aren't any normal registers in the main area of the store, 2 to 3 normal registers open total on the opposite ends of the store, and that's it. And me and the other head cashiers weren't complying the entire time about staying on a register 100% of the time because we were going to prioritize at least knowing when to send breaks and our cashiers home. Even if it meant us getting into trouble. Well, today was Black Friday, and my supervisor, along with the store manager, and a few other managers were lurking around almost constant. A couple actually helped, which was appreciated, but I digress. The other day, I mentioned to my supervisor when she insisted head cashiers had to stay on a register, how we were supposed to send breaks, or how we would direct the line because most people won't walk to an open register even when SCO is empty. She told me to figure it out, and if I have to keep my head on a swivel so I can check customers out and get the line down, then so be it. So, I let them run the show. They put me on a register. I complied. I only left when I was told to cover for someone going home, or to use the bathroom. My lunch was 2 hours late. I didn't say anything until an hour and a half after the fact because I rarely get my breaks on time anyways, but my lunch is mandatory because, no overtime. My lunch wasn't the only break late though. When I finally got to go on my lunch, one of my cashiers came back from the bathroom, and we both saw his 15-minute break was nearly an hour late. I apologized. And let him know I hadn't been allowed to check the schedule, or I would have sent him already. I told him to go, but let him know he should double-check with our supervisor just in case, since that would mean 2 people would be leaving at once. Then, I come back from my lunch and find out one of our full-time cashiers was forgotten on one of the few normal registers, and was actively building overtime. Something if I was physically there for, would have never happened as she leaves at the same time every day. Except, I was on my lunch. 2 hours late. When I got back inside, another cashier calls because his 15 is over half an hour late. Almost 45 minutes, that's just some of what happened. I wasn't allowed to do my job, and therefore, my cashiers were actively being forgotten about because it wasn't important enough. Oh, and we got just as much credit card applications as we did early last week before we were forced to constantly be on registers. It's not about being on a register. It's about asking in general. Something I may not like, but I do because it's my job, or at least, it was. After seeing how me not doing my job to comply with dumb rules that makes no sense affected my cashiers today, and the fact I got a call back from another job, I put my 2 weeks in. Just to seal the deal after a shitty day. But I'm happy. I'm leaving Hell Depot, and couldn't be happier. I just worry for my cashiers who are probably going to continue to suffer with these new rules and regulations, and especially if anyone above them actually complies to them 100%. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 2, let me get your change. I work at a gas station in Oregon, with half the pumps being self-serve and half being mini-service, which means that we're there to pump your gas for you but not obligated to do anything else, like wash your windshield. But we do when we're asked, to be nice. There's this lady that comes in almost every day and gets like $5 or $10 worth of gas, asks us to wash her windshield, and never tips. She's really weird about it, like it's her little power trip. Last time she was in, it was raining, and she still smugly asked me to wash her windshield. And being hardcore customer service guy, I did, but then I thought twice about it after the fact. I go that length for nice folks, but she's not nice. She's bitchy and whiny and weird. So, windshield lady comes in today and hands me $9 for gas and then as usual asks me to wash her windshield with a smug look on her face. I said I would, but then by the time I got back out, there were a good 8 cars on the pumps. I told her I'm sorry, I can't do your windshield right now. It's too busy. Well, she gets really snotty with me and has me stop the pump, which means that since she paid cash, she needs her change. Okay, you'll get your change. I went inside and told my coworker I need the change on pump 2, but make sure to vend extra pennies from the safe and put 50 of them in there, loose. He looked at me like I was crazy, but then I explained who it was for, and so he gladly handed me over the change. By the way, we have to wait in line inside the attached convenience store with other customers to get change for gas. Because our pump guy often doesn't have their own till open for a shift. So, as I was standing in line to get windshield lady's change, she came inside and was death glaring our other customers and then must have seen me waiting and went back out to her car. She was already getting snotty with me the moment I walked back out to her car. So put the $3 bills in her hand and then an absolute cascading ass load of pennies and a few nickels on them. Sorry, we're short on silver, I said. The look on her face, that was the most satisfying use of pennies ever. She sounded like Mr. Lumbergh Milton from Office Space. She was still stammering when she was driving away and I didn't listen to or identify a single word she said. Hoping this will discourage her from coming back. But if it doesn't, then we will once again have a shortage of silver change. Because alas, that is the economy that we are in. Times are tough. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 3, if we want your input, we will ask for it. Period. Edit, someone I work with found this post and sent me the link. He's a bit high right now and said, dude, this sounds like what happened to us. Poor guy is freaking out right now. A few months ago, a new business investor at work came on board as a manager, and he has been an absolute hard ass. He is cracking down on anything he considers to be a waste of time, and he is unforgiving. After a week of watching us work, he and the other managers held a company-wide meeting to iron out some wrinkles in the company that he observed since he started. It wasn't an open dialogue though. In fact, that's one of the things he wanted to wrinkle out. It was essentially just 20 minutes of, it's our way or the highway. Deal with it. The line, if we want your input, we will ask for it. Period, really stuck with me though, and it was made abundantly clear afterwards that it was directed at me. The company has had a big problem recently with employee turnover, and I was in the position to know why, since I interact with everyone through my role. Essentially, people are quitting because the work they were doing wasn't what they signed up to do. The phrase, if I knew this is what I would be doing, I wouldn't have accepted the job, was a common sentiment. They accepted the job under the impression that they would be serving customers, answering emails and phone calls, general customer service stuff. But instead they spend about 90% of their time in a hot warehouse packing online orders over and over again. I shared that with management. I let them know what the people leaving were saying, in case they wanted to take that into account moving forward. They just thanked me and I left, but the new manager hated that so much that he decided to make a meeting about giving them unsolicited advice. They spoke with me privately afterwards and referred back to when I told them about what the quitting employees said, and they told me that the way they interpreted that was that I was implying that they were being deceitful when hiring people. I told them no, I don't think that at all, I was just relaying what those people were saying about how they felt. They didn't care. They doubled down and said again, if we want your input, we will ask for it. Period. That's how I knew it was directed at me. I asked them for clarification, like what constitutes advice or input, and the new boss said, unless you are asking us a question about the work you're supposed to be doing, we don't want to hear it. We don't want your opinion on how you think we should handle situations, we don't want your ideas on how you think the business can be better run, and we don't want gossip about what other people are saying about us, just focus on your job. Fine then, I'll roll with that, no problem. I've worked for them for years and they always appreciated my ideas, opinions and input until that point, but hey, if they don't want my input anymore, that's their choice and I'll respect that. I knew it was just the new boss saying that stuff since this sort of attitude with them only started when he did, but the others either agreed with him or were too intimidated to disagree. Either way, whatever. I'll comply with their request. Since then, the problem hasn't been fixed. We've had 2 more people come and go, both of them because they didn't sign up for this. Shocker, a third one started about 5 weeks ago, and he has taken his frustration in a different direction. I've overheard him complaining over and over again to other people about how he didn't sign on to stand around in a hot warehouse for hours packing online orders, but instead of quitting like everyone else, he just got angrier and angrier, and then he hulked out. I was upstairs at my desk when I started to hear smashing. I went down to the warehouse to see what was going on, and this guy was taking customers' packages and smashing them out of frustration. A few others in the warehouse gathered and just watched in amusement. It was like something out of a cartoon. The new boss heard the commotion and came down. Long story short, the guy was fired and I was asked if I knew why he flipped out. I said, I don't know what happened exactly to cause him to flip out, but I know that for weeks he's been complaining about not signing up to work in a hot warehouse for hours. Maybe he just reached a tipping point about it, not sure, and he said, well, why didn't you tell us? So, of course, I said, because last time I told you that employees were complaining about that, you accused me of implying that you were being deceitful when hiring them. Then you told me to stop gossiping. He had to eat crow a bit on that, which was just so fucking delicious to witness, but I was also reprimanded for taking the request too literally, and he accused me of being petty. Whatever though, I don't care, because I had to adjust the stock levels for the goods that had to be replaced and they lost about $10,000 in the rampage. Some of the items that were smashed worth $2,000 each. Learning that made the whole thing worthwhile, perhaps enjoying that does make me petty. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 4, Who is really watching the clock? Backstory, I used to work in hotels years ago. The hotel I worked at has a policy where there must be at least one staff member at the hotel 24/7. I worked the unenviable but fireproof position of part-time front desk and relief night audit, so I never knew when I was going to be working. 16-hour shifts were uncommon but expected of me when the main night audit called in sick. The story, I had a middle manager who got bored and liked to ruffle feathers for entertainment. Annoying, but I only had to deal with it for 2 to 3 days a week because no one else wants to cover the night audit, so I suck it up and deal. They also love to sleep in and would routinely call in late in the mornings. I really couldn't stand them, but they were my boss, so after giving the essential information and passed the torch from the night audit to the morning manager and crew, I clocked out promptly and got out of the line of fire. So, I thought, I get a call waking me up at 11 a.m., because I was sleeping off my graveyard shift that night. I was told to report to the hotel for a disciplinary meeting that includes a middle manager and the general manager of the hotel, my boss's boss. I asked them what the meeting was about and they replied that it was due to my excessive use of overtime. I then asked them if I could come in before my shift that night so that I could actually get some sleep for my next graveyard shift. They replied that I would have to arrive within the hour, took me 30 minutes to drive to get there, or they would tack on insubordination or some other nonsense to my file as well. I needed the job for rent, so I complied and got to the hotel half asleep. As I am driving, I am trying to figure out how to explain away the nice overtime additions on my paycheck. Took me a solid 10 minutes, but I remembered that the middle manager had yet to actually show up on time for the past month. That wakes me up more, and I show up to the meeting absolutely cheerful and smiling, much to the displeasure of the GM and my boss. Boss goes on a tirade about how abusing company time is horrible in many different ways. I no longer have my shit-eating grin, but I am also unfazed by the dressing down and let them blow out their steam that was likely put on them by payroll or HR about how my paychecks were getting too fat for their liking. This is confirmed by a shorter but more professional dressing down by my GM about me costing the company excess money and that I should know better because I run the hotel's books. I calmly state that all of the overtime statements were true and that I would like to compare my punch times to the staffing schedule and the start/end times of the people I was relieving in the evening and who was relieving me in the morning. I explained to them that I was only staying on until the next crew relieved me and I had sufficient time to brief the incoming crew per the corporate policy of the hotel must be manned 24/7. They do and see that there is only a 3-5 minute overlap between my shift and the person relieving me. GM looks pissed and middle manager went from smug to looking like they got their hand caught in the cookie jar as their clock-ins showed usually 7-ish and sometimes even 7:30 when their start time was 6. I was then told by the GM that they would reimburse me for the minutes to drive to and from the hotel as well as the duration of the meeting and that the write-up was being dropped in light of new information. Fallout: middle manager still made my life miserable until I left, but at least they never gave me grief about overtime after that and actually started showing up to work at 6 a.m. and not snooze until 7. My paychecks were less, but at least I got more sleep because I was now better able to beat the morning commute at the end of my shift. Edit: I knew my paychecks were coming in hefty for my wage. I never made a stink about staying late because hotels pay maybe 5 cents more than minimum wage if you work graveyard shifts. I kept my mouth shut about my check. I needed that extra cash and dealt with the sleep deprivation for the almost guaranteed additional hour of overtime at the expense of a lazy and petty boss. I had my moment of, how do I save myself, on the way to work and was conveniently able to throw my rabble-rousing manager under the bus in one go. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 5, you sure you want your money? Fine, you're going to get every penny. This isn't my story, it was a close friend of a, then, close friend. I'm not sure how I never thought about sharing it as it is one of the best malicious compliance stories I've ever heard. There's also quite a bit of background here, mostly to explain old tech. This guy, we'll call him G, was pretty wealthy. Dude had a nepo job where he worked in a factory fixing the machinery which almost literally never broke. Someone always had to be on duty to be ready for repairs, so he got all kinds of overtime and was being paid almost $75 per hour in the early aughts. To give you an idea of the kind of money he was making and how he didn't care. He spent most whole days sitting around watching movies on a personal laptop that he had spent over $2,000 on and just left it at his desk. If he had a call to the floor, it would take him no more than an hour, and that would happen maybe 3 times in a week. Holidays were 2.5x pay and he worked every one of them. This guy was a bit of a tech nerd and he got an ISDN account as soon as it came out. For your young-ins or folks who weren't savvy at the time, ISDN was basically 256. 6 kbps modems smushed together. This was back when 56.6K was as good as it got for residential and you could still pay for slower. So, fast AF, for its day. Back in the days of dial-up, the dark ages, some services would be paid by the minute of usage in addition to your monthly bill, and that's how this worked. Also, because dial-up was literal and used existing infrastructure, you could take your modem with you and use it somewhere else by logging into your account from a new location and dialing the closest number to you. This was also back in the day of long-distance charges. Now for the actual story. G just got his ISDN modem and after a day or so took it to his brother's house one town over to show him how fast it was, and after they played around on the internet for a bit, G had to go to work and he would be doing some long shifts for the next couple of days, so his brother asked to borrow his modem, which G said was fine. I don't understand exactly how it happened, but his brother had signed into a long-distance number and then forget to shut the connection down. And then G got his first month's bill. It was over $14,000. He immediately called the service provider and explained the situation, and they basically told him, "You signed a contract, sucks to suck. We want our money." He relented and set up a payment plan. He would also be required to keep the contract going until the bill was fully paid. Now, if you've never even heard of ISDN, even if you're 30 years old, I don't blame you. This was a very short-lived technology and was replaced by DSL just a couple years later, but unlike ISDN, DSL required new infrastructure, and for some reason I don't fully understand, but I have guessed is probably the way some important switch on the service provider's network was set up. The two services could not coexist in the same small regions the size of like a neighborhood, and G lived in a pretty nice neighborhood, not mansions but upper middle class. The best neighborhood our small town had to offer, in fact, and people just wanted DSL. It was the first time the internet was getting close to recognizable as it is today, cause it was so much faster than what was previously available. The folks in this neighborhood wanted those speeds and did not like being told that they couldn't have it, so, service provider calls up G and explained the situation and offered to waive the remaining amount of the bill. G told them the whole bill was bullshit and asked if they would refund what he had already paid, but they just told him to go fuck himself. Malicious compliance. G tells them he has a contract and points out that they are obligated to fulfill their end of the contract and he will be paying his bill in full, and hung up. He keeps paying. Service provider keeps getting a call from more customers wanting DSL and folks who had previously calling back more and more irate. G gets another call, then another, until service provider decides to just tell people exactly who is responsible for their neighborhood's lack of DSL service. His neighbors let loose on him, but does G care? Not at all, just keeps paying his bill. This went on for more than a year. Eventually service provider just decided to get rid of ISDN completely as it was a legitimately outdated technology, and did forgive the remainder of G's bill since they weren't fulfilling their end of their contract, but the whole thing was just wonderful. Edit. Some people have pointed out technical issues with the story, and someone said that I am repeating a tall tale from someone else and that allay be true. This is the story as it was told to me. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 6, I thought I mastered malicious compliance. Then my wife showed me how it's really done. For this story, you need to know that I am the kind of person who will go a great distance for a good laugh, as you will see below. I love this story, and we tell it every once in a while, even though it has been more than 20 years. I live in the US and I own an IT support company. Many years ago, I used a cell phone company named Nextel. They had this great push-to-talk feature that turned your phone into a walkie-talkie, which was perfect for communicating with coworkers in my IT work. However, their customer service was a nightmare. Anytime I needed to contact them, it would take at least 30 to 40 minutes on hold. Eventually, I had to switch to a cheaper service, which meant getting a new number. Now you can port your number to a new carrier, but back then, you had to change numbers if you switched carriers. I cancelled all the phones on our plan except for mine, which I downgraded to an emergency plan costing about $10 a month. I left the old phone plugged in at my office and set my voicemail message to instruct callers of my new number. The phone just sat next to my desk on a shelf, plugged into a charger, so that I could see if anyone called. I could also hear the phone make a sound when it disconnected from the cellular network and then a different sound when it connected to the cellular network. It connected and disconnected constantly there in my office, I would estimate that it only stayed connected to the network about 50% of the time. After 6 months, I decided to cancel it. I had to wait on hold for the customary 30 to 40 minutes just to cancel my service. After telling the service rep that I was always dropping off the network, and that I had already switched services, they verified the service problems on my account and canceled my entire plan. I wasn't under any contract at the time, so there was no problem canceling my service with Nextel. As expected, I got my final bill. It was somewhere around $10 since that was my monthly plan, just the emergency plan, and I didn't make any phone calls. I paid the bill and was happy to be done with that carrier. Then, the next month, I got a bill for 4 cents. Yes, just 4 cents. I figured it was a clerical error and ignored it, expecting them to write it off. But no, each month, another bill for 4 cents arrived. I was incredulous. I checked the postmark and saw that the postage to send me the bill was costing them 10 times more than the bill itself. And they kept sending the bill every month. I could have paid the bill, but it seemed ridiculous to write a check for 4 cents and spend more on a stamp. After 6 months, I finally had enough and decided on some very petty, malicious compliance. I decided to invest the 40 minutes on hold to call Nextel to work this out. By golly, if they wanted my 4 cents, I would give them my 4 cents. I planned to wait on hold for 40 minutes and pay the 4 cents with a credit card, knowing it would cost them more in fees. I told my wife about my plan, thinking it was the perfect malicious compliance story. But my wife, the true master of malicious compliance, suggested an even better idea: call and ask if I could make payments on the 4 cents, splitting it into 2 payments on my credit card. OMG. I was in the presence of malicious royalty. I called, waited on hold for 40 to 45 minutes, and finally got through to a representative. The representative sounded like one of those airport terminal attendants who act like they are checking your reservations. But instead, they are writing a Stephen King-length novel. I could hear the clickety-clackety sound of the keyboard. The female representative was constantly typing as I explained that I had cancelled my service but kept getting the final bill and proposed making payments. The representative, typing away, said she'd look up my account. As she typed away at her keyboard, I explained that I had gotten the final bill and that I would like to set up a payment plan to take care of the outstanding balance. I told her that I would like to pay half on my credit card today and pay the remaining half the following month. She was agreeing with me and typing away when suddenly she stopped typing and went quiet. "Sir," she said. "Yes?" I replied. "Are you aware of the balance amount?" "Yes," I said. "4 cents," she said. "Yes," I said. "I figured that you really wanted that 4 cents because you keep spending all this postage to send me bills each month. So, I'm just calling you to take care of it." After a brief silence, I heard the clickety-clack of the keyboard again and she said that I would not have to worry about the balance because she was writing it off. I insisted on giving my credit card for the first half of the payment. But she firmly dismissed it and assured me I wouldn't get any more bills. My wife's suggestion turned a simple prank into a masterpiece of malicious compliance. I may be good at it, but my wife is on another level. And you really have to want to do malicious compliance to wait on hold for 40 minutes. Edit 1. Thank you to all you kindred spirits of malicious compliance. I wanted to post an edit to show what I've learned from this great community. Although I have fond memories of this story, my wife and I both laugh at the other, possibly better, options of dealing with this situation. First, a couple of commenters stated that I was stupid for waiting on the phone for 40 minutes to do this. Yes. No argument there. But my first line above states that I will go a great distance for a laugh. However, no customer service reps were injured in this exercise. The conversation only took a couple of minutes. I saved the company money because they fixed their stupid error. They stopped spending more on postage than the actual bill, and I was working in my office while I was on hold. So, a little time traded for a funny story. Second, some people had great ideas for other possibilities. most suggested paying slightly more than the 4 cents so that Nextel would have to deal with the refund. Then Nextel would constantly have to send me statements in the mail. I like this. And if Nextel ever sent a refund check, I wouldn't cash it. I know in my own business that when a customer writes a check for a penny off, it causes me at least 5 minutes to fix. Sometimes it even takes a little longer. So, this option appeals to me. U/PSEMCR45 suggested paying it with British pound to make them deal with conversion and a refund. I love this. Do you know how much that would cost me? I would definitely do this next time. U/Squibbit314 suggested taping 4 pennies to the bill and mailing it in. I wondered if taping 5 pennies would generate more issues for Nextel and give me a 1-cent credit. Thank you for tuning in. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. And while you're at it, click the notification as well. This is all for now. See you again in the next video.